Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to this session, which is a little bit more policy-oriented than other ones, let's say, because I have a double objective. One, to remind you what the EU's objectives in terms of language learning are, and secondly, present to you a very new report, less than a month old, that the Eurydice network prepared for us on key data on teaching languages in Europe. So I think it's very good, with all the presentations we've been hearing these days, to also see what is happening on the ground in terms of the languages learned, in terms of the level that is aimed at, etc. So just to put everything into context, the policy we are operating in is within the aim of achieving the European education area by 2025. One of the areas of that, so that means that by 2025 we would like to have a space in which students can move freely among member states to continue studying, doing research or work in other member states. And quality in education is one of the building blocks of that European education area. And in particular, language learning is part of that block, because obviously in order to move to work or to study in other member states, you need to know the language of that member state. And at the same time, by using that mobility and going abroad, you are going to learn and improve the language that you've already been working on. So in terms of language learning, what is the European objective that all member states of the EU gave themselves in 2019, and which is a little bit a continuation of an older objective? We call it the Barcelona objective of 2001. At the time we said mother tongue +2. Now we say language of schooling +2. We have 11.5% of students in the EU that are learning in a language that is not their mother tongue. So what we are attempting at is that they have a second foreign language that they can, master sufficiently well to go abroad, study, work, or whatever they want to keep going in other member states. And then a second either foreign language, either their mother tongue if they are not having the language of schooling as mother tongue, either regional or minority languages, that they can also speak, 1+2. Other important elements of the recommendation focus on the learning outcomes. Learning outcomes is also what we have been talking a lot in this conference, being able to use the language. Start as early as possible. A big element that was introduced in 2019 was also language awareness. So all the linguistic portfolio of the students seen as an asset. So it's important to valorize that and valorize all mother tongues, and of course support students also in the language of schooling, through which they will be acquiring a lot of academic knowledge. Of course, continue supporting research, as we are doing, on innovative, inclusive, and multilingual pedagogies, digital, CLIL, etc. And we are also supporting the mobility of learners and teachers, and notably through our Erasmus Plus instrument. So some ongoing projects. The first one is the Eurydice key data, which I mentioned in the beginning, and that is going to be the main object of my presentation. Well, I will be showing the indicators of the latest report. But I also wanted to let you know that we are planning a Eurobarometer, so this is a EU-wide survey on Europeans and their languages. So we will be asking them what languages they speak or want to learn, in which context they use it, with which objectives, etc. So it will be quite a thorough survey. It will mirror one that we already conducted in 2012, so it's been 11 years, and we think it's time to see how things are evolving and compare the results again. So in a way, they are complementary. The Eurydice key data is showing us what's happening in the schools from a teaching perspective, but we also need to know what's happening from the point of view of speaking or mastering languages in the European population. And for that, we are also cooperating closely with OECD and ECML of the Council of Europe. The presentation just before this one in this very room was on the 2025 PISA for foreign languages. This is a project we have been supporting in the European Commission from the beginning, and we have 16 member states that will join the voluntary English test. And we are also cooperating for many years with ECML of the Council of Europe, notably on one subject that we have been talking a lot during these 3 days. It's relating the curriculum and the tests and examinations to the CEFR. We have been conducting these trainings with, ECML, also on our behalf in many member states for many years. And we are also working with them on multilingual classrooms and precisely introducing this concept of language awareness as widely as possible, ideally in all European classrooms at some point. But we have seen that in education changes are slow, so it's still a process that is only starting. And of course on raising the bar in language learning. So let's go now to this new report that I have been talking to you about, that has been produced by the Eurocity network, supported by the Commission, and where we have data from all European countries, but also some other neighborhood countries, and Erasmus Plus participating countries, so in total 39. And the report includes 51 qualitative and quantitative indicators, and they are based on data that comes either from the Eurydice network itself, from Eurostat, or from the OECD, PISA's, or TALIS surveys. So first thing I would say is the first indicator is good news for us, because I told you one of the objectives in the recommendation was to start learning languages, foreign languages, as soon as possible. And we see that indeed, if we compare the early 2000s with now, the age in which students need to start to study foreign languages mandatorily has gone down. It's in most of the countries early primary, 6 to 8 years old. There are also a couple of countries, you see them in red, where it's pre-primary. Here we are talking about mandatory education. There are also many countries or schools that may introduce English or other languages in preschool already, but here we are talking about having to introduce them mandatorily. So the starting age has gone down. If we look at our objective of learning 2 foreign languages, which is what we are attempting at, we see that we are at 60% of the students in general education. Here we have not seen a big improvement since 2013. We were at 58 then, and we are at 59 now. Of course, for the one foreign language, it's a lot more. Basically, in general education, every student does at least one foreign language. In vocational education and training, however, we also see a much lower figure than in general education. So there we even have some students that don't do any 18% that don't do any foreign languages at all, and then 35% who would do 2 foreign languages, which is the European objective. So here, a less good result that we have observed from the evolution in these years. Of course, it is not mandatory to learn 2 foreign languages in all member states. So that is one of the reasons that could explain it. Not all of the students choose to learn a second language, even if it's offered to them. The most learned foreign language, surprise, surprise, of course, it's English. I mean, virtually every lower secondary education student in the EU is learning English. It's 98.3%. Of course, the difference may be explained by Ireland, where this English is not learned as a foreign language. So there again, a success story. And indeed, in several member states, it's even compulsory to learn English. The ones that we see in red, 21 education systems where it is compulsory. But for those where it's not, it's still the chosen language. So it doesn't make much of a difference. Let's go into the second most learned foreign language. So here it's a little bit more split, but you see in the bubbles the countries where, which is the second foreign language in the bubble countries. So you see a split that is quite even between French and German. We observe that in particular French is chosen more in the primary and lower secondary, and German in the upper secondary, but well, it's quite an even split. Maybe the southern countries are more choosing French and the eastern countries more choosing German. Then the next language would be Spanish. The next one, Russian, in particular in the eastern countries. And then the other ones are already quite small, no, for us chosen second languages. What is the expected foreign language proficiency that member states are aiming at in their education systems? So for the first foreign language, as you see, a majority of our member states are aiming at B2. We have a couple of more ambitious ones that go into C1, and then a few that are attempting just a B1. For the second foreign language, it's mainly B1, that is a targeted level, or in a few cases, A2. And of course, that is related to the CEFR. Another indicator that we have liked to see is that foreign language teachers' mobility has increased from 57 to 72%, so quite a big increase since we last reported in 2013. Of course, there is a big variation in our member states. For instance, Spain and the Netherlands and Iceland as well are very mobile, like 80% of the foreign language teachers. And then only a minority of mobile foreign language teachers we found in Bulgaria, Romania, and Turkey. And 1 in 4 of those are supported by an EU program, mainly by Erasmus+. This indicator is about the language heterogeneity in schools. I already mentioned it in the very beginning. So 11.5% of students in the EU have a mother tongue or speak at home a different language than their language of schooling. So it's to say that language heterogeneity is very much the reality of European schools. Again, of course, very big variations. So some member states have very high levels of children in this category, in this case, more than 15% of heterogeneity, whereas there are other member states where it is very low, no? Less than 5%. There you have some of the examples for the more heterogeneous and the least heterogeneous. We were also trying to find indicators to show us how we are performing in terms of language awareness. And that is not so easy because it's not something that we have been measuring for a long time. So actually the picture is still patchy. But then we tried to find some indicators that could give us an idea of how schools are integrating this idea. So we saw, for instance, that in most educational systems, schools are providing support in the language of schooling for those children that have other languages in their repertoire. And so that's good news. However, there is very few member states that are providing support in the mother tongue, or the migrant students' mother tongue most of the time. So there is still quite a lot of work to progress. Support can be provided in many ways. It can be during school hours, outside of them, with teaching assistants that could be helping in the classrooms who have the same language as the children. So there are different ways, and we, in the report, if you look into it, you can have more detailed information on what member state is providing what kind of help. But still a very new area that we are monitoring and where we find few member states that are very engaged. So it's something that still has to be built into the education systems. So I'm already going to conclude, reminding you of where we see the best indicators, or where things have progressed in the best way. So early language learning, learning of English as first foreign language, and teacher mobility. These are the areas where we've seen the biggest improvement since 2013. On the darker side, We have seen no progress in the learning of the second foreign language. It's still too low. It's 60% of our students. Also, more attention needs to be given to language awareness in schools. This is one of the areas, precisely as I was saying, where we are working with ECML of the Council of Europe with trainings to member states who choose to have them on how to deal with multilingual classrooms for this matter. Erasmus Plus, need to remind you, if you are in the educational system, make use of this wonderful tool either for cooperation or mobility projects. It is a wonderful tool for language learning, of course, motivating the students to go abroad and to exploit the language that they have learned. And then lots of material available in our European School Education platform for teachers, including on language learning and language awareness. We have free courses and lots of different materials there as well. So I will conclude my presentation there. Thank you very much. And if you have questions, please.